What's up, guys?
Awesome. Welcome, everybody, to Mind Connection, connecting like minds in conversation. I'm Nisha from Mindtree, and I am super, super excited, in case you can't tell. This is our first Facebook Live, and I'm even more excited that I get to do it with my two awesome friends, Kathy and Kev, fellow coaches. Thank you guys so much for doing this with me. I love you both.
No, we love you, and thank you for having us. Super, super excited about this and this conversation.
Yay.
Especially on this weekend, perfect timing. I love like the synchronicities and the connections and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. You guys want to introduce yourselves though and tell our audience where to find you and what you're doing these days?
Yeah, of course. Ladies first.
Yes, I am Kathy Walden. What am I up to? Is that what you asked? What am I up to? Doing this with you, of course, and doing some coaching and doing some living. And people can find me at Kathy Walden or on Instagram at Kathy Walden Spiritual Coach. And I'm just so happy to be here today and trying to stay warm with all this cold weather.
You have nothing to complain about. I'm here in like Princeton University, and it's like 25 degrees. I'm Kevin Samuel, founder and CEO of Chasing You. I'm a certified Jay Shetty transformation personal development coach. And you can find me at Chasing You on Instagram and chasingyou.org.
Nice. So just so our audience knows, the three of us met through the Jay Shetty certification program. And I have to say, I don't know if any of you can resonate with this, but have you ever met somebody and for the first time and you just feel like you've known them all your life? Well, that's totally how I felt when I met Kathy and Kev, and we've become really close since the program. I don't know, guys, we probably talk almost at least once a week, right? And yeah, and we love to coach each other. Kathy and Kev are both amazing coaches. They've coached me, and we love to have deep conversations, and especially when it comes to spirituality and personal growth. So we thought this would be really fun to share with you all one of our conversations about one of our favorite topics, which is self-love. So I wanted to start with just kind of each of us and just so our audience knows, like, we are going deep today, okay? So this is not your superficial self-love. This is not just affirmations and finding a beautiful journal to write in. This is the real deal here. So I wanted to start with actually each of us sharing our own personal stories, because I feel like maybe it can resonate with some of our viewers, on whatever our experience was when we first discovered self-love or when it actually became a thing in our lives. Who wants to go first?
Kevin, why don't you start this time?
No, I feel like Nisha should start first.
Oh, you want me to start?
Yeah.
All right, I will share. So for me, I think I know, for me, it was very concrete. So I didn't grow up with this sense of self-love. I grew up trying to be the good girl and trying to, what I thought was being a good girl was actually having this sense of self-sacrifice. I thought that it meant putting others' needs before my own. And so I lived most of my life that way up until, I would say, about 6 years ago. It was during a time when I was at one of my lowest points, not the lowest, but definitely a low point in my life, where I was going through a difficult divorce, had been married for 22 years, and I was also dealing with a chronic illness. And I really, up until that point in my life, I really was religious in the tradition sort of sense, but I wouldn't call myself spiritual at all. In fact, I didn't really know much about spirituality. And it was my first introduction to energy and spirituality. And this was, during a Reiki workshop where I was learning how to practice Reiki. And, I had already been meditating, but I would say the first 4 or 5 years of meditating, when I was doing it regularly, I was only meditating for stress reduction. Like I had no other sort of, no other intention for the meditation other than stress reduction. And so during this Reiki workshop, we were asked to make a list of the qualities that we loved about ourselves. And you guys know that now I incorporate this in our meditations too. But we were asked to make a list, and I lost it. Like I couldn't think of a single thing. And it just seemed like such a basic question. And literally in the middle of the workshop, I just broke down into tears. I lost it. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, what is this? I didn't know that I had even permission to love myself. I didn't know that it was acceptable. And that was really the turning point for me. It was realizing, that self-love was even a thing, and that it was okay. And we'll get into this later, but I guess I always thought that it was selfish, to love myself. And yeah, that was the start. And that was really the start of my whole spiritual journey, in terms of asking those existential questions and really, working on myself. But yeah, that's what my intro was to self-love.
Mm.
All right. Who wants to go next?
Kathy.
Well, I think some of my friends, my closest friends will understand it, but other people I know will not understand it because I appeared to be very strong and very capable, and I acted like I knew what I was doing, but it was all a front because deep down I was so insecure. I didn't love myself. I was in a marriage that was, on the outside, I looked okay and things looked okay, but on the inside and inside our home, things were definitely not okay. And so I think people who have known me for a long time would be surprised that I suffered from low self-esteem. But until about last year, and I am 58 years old. It is almost 58. And so it is literally.
You look amazing, Kathy.
Oh,
you do not look 58.
Well, I mean, so for that long, I really haven't had self-esteem or self-love. Now, did I have moments of that when I was younger? Maybe, but it still wasn't there. And so this last year was really when I worked on it. I think getting into the Jay Shetty school, I think actually getting coached by people where all of a sudden we were digging deep and I realized, oh, wow, I don't have self-esteem. Like I don't love myself. And what helped me was when we got to what I love about the school was it really makes you dig deep and you journal and you spend that time really reflecting inward. And I'd done a lot of spiritual work up until then. So it's not like I hadn't been doing spiritual work. I absolutely had. I just hadn't done kind of the final step. I was still looking for things outside of me for my self-love instead of going internally. I looked for self-love from men, from spiritual teachers, from books, from religion, from anything that was outside of me. And last year was really the first time I totally went inward and said, no, you got to figure this out. And I remember we did a thing that was on values. And I remember thinking, gosh, I seem to value a lot, but I really didn't know what I really valued. And then I started thinking about it. And I think, Kevin, you and I worked with each other during that time as well. And I realized what I valued was I actually was very courageous. I've done a lot of things that have been very courageous. I've done things that most people wouldn't do. And I am resilient. I was again, doing things and pushing through things. And then I realized one of the things I was thinking about today today too was that I'm actually very gentle, but I hadn't allowed myself or others to see me as gentle. So I think last year getting really vulnerable with myself and vulnerable helped me to then find that love within myself. And then I really started to trust myself and trust my choices and trust my life with me instead of people outside of me. And so mine came a little bit later, but it did come, and I'm so grateful. And so my confidence now is very different than it was even a year ago. Now I'm willing to let go of everything and allow life and God to help me get to the next places instead of me feeling like, now of course that sounds like it's out there. It's not out there, but because it's an internal job. So I'm trusting my intuition more than I ever had. And I'm trusting God to guide me in that intuition, as I feel intuition is our internal guidance system. So really mine started a year ago and I love it. It's an adventure.
It is.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kathy. Kev, what's your story?
Yeah, so my story is self-love. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to both of you guys for being vulnerable and for expressing your story. Because I think the more we talk about it, the more it brings awareness, and the more it also, at least for me personally, it gives that sense of honor to my experience and respect. Because for me, self-love was the huge turning point. I know for me that my awareness to self-love started November 27, 2017. It was also the start of my spiritual journey. And on that day, so it was the end of my relationship with this guy. And I was on the phone with him actually, and he was just like, there was no emotional connection with you, Kevin. It was just physical. And I remember being drunk and coked out. It was just like, it was in the morning, so the sun was shining and I was looking at the mirror. And I was just like, and I had a couple of these moments where I would look in the mirror prior to this date and be really filled with disgust and hate and anger of like, who is this person? But on that date, it was the first time I looked and I was like, wow, I don't know who this person is, but I'm going to take the steps necessary to put his needs and to figure out those, or to begin that search to answer those existential questions. So just a little backstory, like from where I grew up and kind of my story and who I am. Like, I grew up in an Indian family, and I feel for me personally that in the Indian community, it's not necessarily self-love. It's not necessarily nurtured. It's or catered. It's really about being of service to others and to put your family before your own needs. So I kind of grew up with that mentality, and then from just my culture, just my religion that I was born into. I grew up in a Christian family. Again, it's about being, the mindset of the people who were nurturing me was very sacrifice yourself for other people. So I was never really taught to just love myself. I don't know if you guys ever heard of like multi-stress theory, which is basically, or multi-minority stress theory. It's the more of a minority you are in your different groups, whether it's your race, your culture, your religion, your sexuality, the more stress you experience. So as a gay man, also growing up in a world where I was told that being gay is wrong, I didn't really know how to put my needs first. I thought my needs were wrong needs. And there were actually basic things like, I want to be in a household where there's not violence, or I want to be in a school where I can learn and not be told certain things from teachers or like the people I experience. So for me, all this stuff kind of built up, and I would find external ways to kind of numb and kind of escape, and things that I thought would give me love. So I think that's the one thing that's not really taught, is how to love yourself. Like, we're always taught like self-love, but like school doesn't nurture you to love yourself. A lot of environments, or at least for me, didn't teach me the tools to how to love myself. So long story short, like I ended up being in credit card and financial issues. I was in a toxic relationship with someone who, I mean, now I look at it and I see the beauty in all of it, but it was definitely not healthy. And I learned to perfect myself and be a chameleon. So the outside looks so perfect, but the inside there was no foundation. There was no love. And I'm a romantic. And the funny thing is, like, throughout my whole entire life, I was like, love is going to save me. Love is going to save me. But I didn't know that if I love myself first,
Yes.
then it's going to give me the access to experience
Yeah.
love. I love this analogy of, like, everyone's seen it. Like, you've been on an airplane. If you haven't, get on an airplane. But they always talk about, like, they do this brief, like, safety measure, like, and it's like, put your mask on first before you put someone else's mask on. And I didn't know that in order for me to really experience love, I had to give it to myself. And that's what the last 4 or 5 years have been about. It's about self-love. For me, self-love is also tied in with spirituality, about understanding who I am and putting my needs first. And it's funny, it's like, the more you give love to yourself, the more love you get to experience with other people.
Yes.
And the quality is just so much richer. It's deeper. It's not, for me, conditional. So yeah, it's kind of my journey and kind of where my story is. And I don't know if that totally made sense, but
No, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And thank you both for opening up to me and to our audience, because like you said, Kev, like, I think what's amazing is the three of us have been able to find beauty in whatever struggles we went through, you know, and coming from that place of now having the self-love, of having the self-compassion, it just makes us stronger, and we're able to not only handle life, but we're also able to trust our intuition more. And I want to dive into that. So do each of you feel that it is necessary to feel the self-love in order to manifest, or in order to tap into that intuition? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, from my personal experience, I did not have to have self-love in order to manifest. I am a manifester. That is just something that comes naturally to me, and I've been able to manifest even when I didn't love myself. However, and my manifesting hasn't changed what I've wanted to manifest, because it's still always been about, what am I here for? What is my highest good? My manifestation's not been, I want $1 million. Not that that's bad. That can be what people want to manifest. I'm all for it. If that's what you want to manifest, go for it. That's not been my calling. My calling is to serve people and serve others. So for me, I haven't needed to have that self-love in order to manifest. However, now the manifesting is still taken on kind of a different tone as I am now loving myself more and trusting myself, because that's one of the things you kind of mentioned, Kevin, was that self-trust. Now all of a sudden, not only do I have the loving of myself, but now I trust myself. So now I'm trusting my intuition to take me where I need. And so now in my opinion, the manifesting is now different, because I'm manifesting towards more of what my soul is longing for, instead of what outside of me has longed for. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Kev, you want to add to that?
yeah, no, I was going to say, so for me personally, I think my manifestation, or my ability to achieve goals. So when I say manifestations, I also say desires, or my ability to achieve goals. It's all like, has improved tremendously since I've tapped into self-love and my understanding of self-love. And the reason being is, for me, when I look at the past, a lot of prolonging to my desires or obstacles was created because I was at war with myself. I didn't recognize my limiting beliefs. I didn't recognize my weaknesses, which now are my strengths. But like, I didn't take those times to study myself. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to be a perfectionist but not let it hold me back. I didn't know how to accept the pieces of me that I didn't want to accept, because the world put a different label on it. So I think for me, the self-love piece has been tremendous, and I've seen a difference, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Because for me, self-love is also, again, it's going back to accepting who you are in a moment, whole and complete. So it's about also like knowing who you are and understanding that. And now that I've taken those steps, and I'm still taking those steps, like, it's still peeling back layers. But because I've taken that time, now it's like, I don't have to think twice. There's no doubt in myself. And I love this whole idea of, I'm not at war with myself. I've learned to actually to nurture that self. There's a relationship, there's an intimacy with the self, not in a narcissistic ego way, but more of like a human, like, I don't know, acceptance. Kind of like how I kind of view God. It's like this unconditional person who loves you no matter what. And that's kind of how I see myself. And that's thanks to self-love, the steps I've taken for self-love. So for me, or to answer the question, it's had such an impact. And it's such a beautiful ride. It's like, it's one thing to know when you like, or it's such a freeing thing when you realize that you're the one who put yourself in the cage. But you're also the one who has the key to take yourself out of the cage. You're the one who can, like, you want to experience love. Like, you can spend years and hours and whatever it is on trying to find it outside, but if you can cultivate it internally,
yes,
it makes everything else so much more, what's the word? Rich. It's so much more potent. It's like you still get the cake, everything else is just the icing. So it's like, when you know how to love yourself, it's like wonders.
And maybe it's like the ice cream, because you are the cake and the frosting. That's just the ice cream, right?
Or maybe it's the chocolate sauce that goes on top of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that when I used to like try to date, everyone was like, oh, you complete me. And I used to think, no, like I need to be the cake and all of that, and then have the side things. But even back then, I didn't know who I was, right? I still didn't know who I was. So I couldn't be the whole cake for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just want to add real quick, I think that's, for me at least, the part of the human journey. It's getting back to, who am I? What's my purpose? How do I experience love, peace, freedom, to my understanding? Like, and I think that's what I love so much, at least for me, what I realized about self-love, or the self-love journey. So that's self-care, that self-love, that self-compassion, etc. It's about experiencing life, but redefining it to who I am, to my values, to my morals, to underneath all the labels, like my soul. And going back to, like, again, the fundamental broad thing of unconditional love. It's all about love. But real quick, Nisha, what's your thoughts?
No, I agree. And, as someone who never really gave intuition much thought up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I feel that the intuition may have always been there. And because manifesting, like, we can manifest the bad things too, right? Manifesting isn't necessarily the good things only. But I feel that definitely after being able to cultivate the self-love and the self-compassion, I do feel like that was a key piece, or maybe not a key piece. That was the first step into me being able to tap into that intuition. And for me, tapping into my intuition also feels very much so as if I'm tapping into that higher power, which is also part of myself, So I want to go ahead, Kathy.
Because I think this is really important, because one of the things that you had mentioned before, when we talk about our families and religion, and it's almost as if they don't want you to, not our families, but almost like even in religion, they don't want you tapping into your intuition, because then they can control you. And keep in mind, I go to church, I'm involved in that, so it's not that I am saying bad on that, but it's still, let's look at that, because when we aren't listening to our intuition, I believe everybody has an intuition. Everybody has their own God-given intuition that is their compass for them. Nisha, you have yours for you and what you are here for. Kevin has his for him and what he's here for. I have mine for what I'm here for. What I value, Kevin may not value, but it's my value. You know what I mean? And so it's important for us to find what it is for us, and not for anybody else, but just for us. And I do think it's interesting that there are so many times they're like, don't trust your intuition. Oh, your intuition doesn't know. Only read this. This is the only thing that knows what is right for you. And yet I'm not sure I buy into all that, because it didn't work for me. I had to trust my intuition. And how I was before, it did not get me the self-love that I wanted. And it didn't get me the connection with God that I wanted. Now I feel like that connection with God is so strong, and it's mostly because I'm loving myself, I'm trusting myself, and they're coming together finally. I just had to say that really quick.
Yeah, no, I love it, Kathy. And I love your passion. I totally agree with you on that. And it actually reminded me of one of the other things that I was thinking about when I was thinking about self-love and just love in general. What do you all think? I have my answer, but I want to hear yours. What do you all think is the opposite of love?
Fear.
Kev, what do you think the opposite of love is?
I think for me, it's fear. It's also a lack of connection with yourself and a lack of connection with something outside of yourself, like your understanding of spirituality. It's like just where I'm at now. And it's funny, if you asked me this question like 3-4 years ago, it would be different. But now for me, it's even in when there's a lack of love in a moment or experience I'm experiencing, there's still love in it. It's just, it brings me back to love. Like for me, I always bring things back to love. So that's a weird question. And
but I
like debate about it, or not debate, but like discussion about it. Because I think even when there's an absence of love, it gives you the ability to create love in your perspective. And I think just tying into what Kathy said about like other people, like religion or family trying to preventing you from going back into you. And I agree. I think it's, and I don't know if it's necessarily intentionally for us not to get connected with myself. I think it's a lack of awareness that the answers are within you. Everything's inside of you. The love you're looking for is inside of you. And again, it's everyone's interpretation of stuff. I think that's the beauty of life, but also like the contrast and downs, like the catch-22 about life. So for me, yeah, going back to like love, I think when there's an absence of it, there's also the ability to create the presence of it.
Yeah, I love that. I love both of your answers. For me, definitely fear came up also, Kathy. And, and that got me thinking too, when we're feeling the opposite of love within ourselves, how does that show up? And just, all the characteristics of like perfectionism, over analyzing, lack of vulnerability, all these things came up, and it kind of brought me back to, it really does all start with self-compassion. And when we don't have that, and when we don't have that self-compassion, that self-love, the opposite of it is self-fear. Mm-hmm. Like we're scared, right? We're scared of being our true selves.
Well, and I've heard it described too that, the sun is always there. The sun never goes away. Now we may have clouds, we may have nighttime, but the sun is always shining and the sun is always there. And that is love. That is God. It is always there. Sometimes we go through a depression. Sometimes we go through something, but that never isn't there. And even in people that we see that may be doing things that we don't agree with, there's always love inside of them. Always love inside of us.
100%. Yeah. I also just want to like add that to that, or like even at night when it's the dark time, there's still the moon that has light that shines. So you're never lost in the dark. Like love is never completely gone. It's just, again, it's about, can you cultivate it? Can you find it? And at least just for me and my journey, like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm glad I had moments of not self-love or not experiencing love, because now it makes me really cherish it. Like now, like I love how Abraham Hicks is who's someone who I like, who's like one of my teachers and my guide, says that you need contrast. So you have to really experience life without love in order to really appreciate it and understand it. So it's such like a duality, such a balance between the two.
Yeah, I haven't always loved that, I have to admit. I mean,
it's hard as shit.
That's probably why I have struggled for so long, is because I have always been a Pollyanna, and I've always just wanted it to be sunshines and rainbows and unicorns and all that. And I haven't wanted to deal with the darkness, so to speak, or the whatever. But what I realized, there was something that I learned last year. Instead of saying life is hard, I love the idea that it's a challenge. There's a challenge there instead of it being hard. Because to me, hard just didn't seem, that does not resonate with me. Because hard almost feels like you can't get past it. Hard is solid. Hard is rough. But a challenge means, oh, well, let's think about how we can get through this. Like, what's another way to work our way through this? And I think, okay, now that I can buy, I can go with, instead of thinking life is hard. It's like, it can be difficult and it's a challenge.
No, totally. And I love how I'm just giving, in my mind, it's another word for changing perspective, learning how to change perspective, learning how to reframe, learning how to realize that those hard, negative, or those unpleasant emotions are not something that can prevent you from moving forward. It's just an indicator, like you talked about earlier, like your guiding system. It's, hey, this negative emotion, this negative feeling, it's a warning sign. Like, let's switch course. Let's get back into trusting yourself. Let's learn. I don't know, it's like what I love to call it's a little winks from God or the universe or yourself. Like, hey, this negative emotion is trying to teach you something. Like, I love the idea of like pain being one of a good teacher. Like, when you put your hand on the oven and you burn yourself, it's to teach you something, it's to protect yourself, it's to get you back to safety and love and, I don't know, nurture yourself and etc. All this good stuff.
Wow, I love that, Kev. I love that, thinking of how it can protect us, how becomes a protection mechanism.
Yeah, totally. Like, I mean, not for nothing, like I look back on some of my painful moments, like my ex, a big one was the end of my relationship with my ex and the whole journey. And I'm like, that was painful, but goddamn, would I go through that again? Oh, hopefully not, but like, I don't regret.
Oh, manifest it.
I would never want to erase it from my story because it's so, like, that painful moments really brought me to where I am today. So it's like, it's so weird. It's one of those things where I think, and this is something, Nisha, that you and I talked about actually when I was coaching you. And it's just like, when you learn to find gratitude into something that you were holding so tightly onto, whether it's, and for me, I took that as pain, like pain that you hold onto, you get to a moment of appreciation of where it brought you in life. And I think that's the beauty of it. And then it ties into some really cool stuff and like at least for me, in self-love, which is surrendering, letting go, acceptance, all those things.
I'm still not there yet. There are still some things. Now, I don't regret anything, but there are still some things that I'm like, I wish I wouldn't have had to go through them. I wish I would have known myself better as a young girl and had self-love. It would have made my choices different as my life progressed. So that I can definitely look back and go, now I know this is my life and this is what I needed to learn. So I'm not saying I regret that. I think that's why I like to work with young women, especially because if you know who you are at an early age, it will change who you marry. It will change the kind of job you have. It'll change the trajectory of your life in a way that is a lot more positive. You will still have challenges in your life. I just think it will help you in ways that you don't even realize that. And look, somebody else may have to wait until they're 58 or 60 or 70 to get that self-love. But if in some small way, if I can help somebody reach it sooner, I mean, Kevin, you're what, 28? Is that okay to say your age? So I love that you're at an age now where the trajectory for you is changing how you do things, and you don't have to wait 30 more years to then have that self-love. So that, I think, is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe you and I not disagree, but like we might view things a little bit differently. Because for me, just how I process the world, I don't think in numbers or like age. I just think it's life gives you, or you reach to certain points based on where you're at when the pain is too much or the ability to get real with yourself is enough. And that can happen at 28, it can happen at 57, it could happen at 22, 21, 18.
Exactly.
Because I've had moments where like I battled with death or the idea of taking my life. I battled with moments where I'm like, hey, this is not the right thing. Like I used to use alcohol as a way to cope and I got in trouble with the cops and I got a DUI, and like that didn't make me stop. It didn't want to make me change. It wasn't until like I got my DUI in 2015, I changed or I surrendered to improving my life in 2017. So there's still a lag. So I think it's all about where you are and when the pain is enough. When you realize that you're the one digging the hole, but you can put the shovel down. It's like, I think that moment of, it goes back to surrender. It's the moment of, hey, I'm going to put the shovel down and I'm going to do the one thing that I've never done, which is give myself the love to satisfy my needs. I think, I think it's just the beauty. And I love that contrast and, or not contrast, but I love how for each person, that moment of where the switch happens or where you reach your bottom.
Yeah, definitely.
It's different. I think it's, like, I don't know. I think it's, I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's, you know when the right time is and you can't judge yourself when that happens because whenever that happens, it's the right time.
Yeah. You know, and it reminds me of something else that I was thinking about. And that was, it's one thing to have love for yourself. It's another thing to like yourself. So like I joke around, like I have no problem loving everybody, but I don't necessarily like everybody. And I think that relates back to myself too, that there are moments when I don't, you know, necessarily like myself, and that's okay, because then it gives us the opportunity to make whatever changes we need to make. But it is so important not to let go just because you may not like yourself at a moment in time. It's so important not to let go of loving yourself, because then that is when you can surrender to the moment. That is when you can have the faith that things will change, right? And that's just, that's no words, just that feeling.
No, totally. Like I can relate with you totally relate to you on the idea of loving everyone, but not like liking per se. Like I tell this to everyone, I'm like, I love everyone. I think everyone has amazing qualities. There's light, it's a light that shines in all of us. Doesn't mean though I'm gonna have you and like have dinner with you. I mean, just because like, yeah.
Yeah, and it depends on like what you're going through also, right? Like for example, my kids. I mean, I love them, absolutely, I love them, but there are times when I don't really like them. I don't want to be around them, you know, and that's okay. Like, and I think that that's really important for us to sort of reflect that on ourselves as well. That's okay. So I did want to bring up, I think, two misconceptions that come up when people think about self-love. And one is that it's wishy-washy, you know, that it's just, it's like, it's whatever. I don't know what other word to use.
The new buzzword.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But talk to me about how you think self-love may show up, and how is it related to actually being courageous and resilient and strong?
Well, I mean,
Go for it. Yeah.
I don't think there's a day that goes by where self-love doesn't show up in some way or form, especially in terms of being courageous. And like, there comes moments where you have to be like, hey, I'm taught that I should be there for my family in this sense, or I'm taught that this is what the right thing looks like, but doing those right things is actually going to be a detriment to me, so I have to step back. And I think to have those conversations, you have to enact courage. I think there's moments where, like, I don't know how to explain it other than self-love is kind of how I view the breath. It's fundamental. It's something that needs to happen. It's for me to show up on a conversation like this in front of people who are going to watch this now or later on has to be the ability for me in my mind to be like, it's okay no matter how you're looking or how you're talking. It's okay. Like, I'm not going to shame myself. I'm just going to show up and be present. So I don't think, at least now, there's a day that doesn't go by where self-love doesn't, it's not just part of my basic function. Even on the days where I don't want to do what is necessary, it's being able to be like, hey, I'm going to forgive you, or I'm not going to hold this against you. So I think it's so intertwined that you can't separate it. It's kind of like, I don't know, another way I consider self-love is spirituality. And it's not just about mental well-being. It's not about just emotional or physical well-being. It's about spiritual well-being. So self-love is so important and so integrated into my life that it's different. Wait, was that your question? Sorry, I like blanked out a little bit.
No, that was awesome. That was awesome. Kathy, you want to add anything to that about being courageous, resilient, and strong?
Yeah, I think it does take a lot of courage to find that self-love. I think that, especially as mothers, and when we are taking care of our children, we will put our children first and we don't put ourselves first. And so to be able to, I was actually thinking about a little bit about that this morning, and I realized when my children were young, I realized that if I gave them 15 minutes of undivided attention during a day, 15 minutes, that was it, but undivided attention to them for 15 minutes a day, they were great the rest of the day. Now, I was still engaged with them throughout the day, but when we literally sat and played together for 15 minutes, and I realized today, what if I had given myself that 15 minutes every day? What if I had done something for myself in that 15 minutes to give myself that time? What kind of difference would that have made for my life? And that goes back to putting the oxygen mask on yourself first and then on your child. Because if you can't give yourself that self-love and that time, even 15 minutes, what do you have left to give everybody else? So I think that that's where that it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of courage to tell your spouse, I need 15 minutes for myself. It takes a lot of courage to even tell yourself that, to go, I am worth 15 minutes of my time today.
I love that. Yeah. And yeah, definitely. So another thing that when we kind of touched on this a little bit is I think that, actually, let me ask you, why do you think that so many people still relate self-love to narcissism? Why do you think that still comes up?
For me personally, I think it's expectations.
Yes.
Expectations of what certain labels look like. So as a son, this is what you should be doing. As a parent, this is what you should be doing. I think it's other people's, and this sounds a little judgmental, but whatever, it's their lack of ability to, or they're not nurturing their own relationship with themselves. So they kind of project that into other people. So I think it's projections, I think it's expectations. Because for me, how I distinguish self-love versus narcissism is self-love provides fulfillment and vitality versus narcissism, which is vanity and hollowness. It's about how does me, and I think also too, when you're coming from a place of self-love, it has a ripple effect that's positive for other people around you. Versus someone who is a narcissist is kind of like, I'm going to take my needs regardless of what the outcome is or how it affects other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that too, because I think in narcissism, it's a me, what can I get, what can I get, what can I get, and what can I make you give to me so I can fill up my own self-worth. But really, most narcissists are probably actually very insecure with themselves. And when we are loving ourselves, it looks like it's about me, because it is about me, but it's about me so I can give to you. It's about me so I can serve the world. It's about me so that I can do what I'm here to do to help others. So the self-love is making sure you love yourself, because I believe it's hard to love other people until you love yourself.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to give our viewers maybe some tips on, and make this actionable, right? Like, how can they start practicing self-compassion, self-love? And, we've been sort of using the two interchangeably, but I do want to point out one thing about self-compassion, and that is the common humanity piece. And that is understanding that we're not alone in whatever it is that we're experiencing. And the other is the mindfulness piece. Like, it all starts with awareness, right? You have to tap into it. But before we share some actual actionable tips, I just want to also thank everybody that's been watching, because it's been amazing. I don't know, can you all see the comments coming in too?
A little bit.
Can you? A little bit? Okay. But it's really been so awesome and so amazing to see everybody's comments come in. And before we wrap it up, if anybody has, any questions at all, just go ahead. Yep, comment, and we will we'll try to answer them. And if we don't have time to answer them, then we will definitely type in some little responses to you. But yeah, so I guess I'll go ahead first. I'll share one of the things that I like to do, and that is, it kind of starts with like my first journey into self-love, and that was to actually make a list, like write down what are those qualities that you love about yourself. And if it is hard, and for a lot of people, just like it was for me, it can be very difficult, think about your loved ones, think about someone whose opinion that you trust, and think about, well, what would they say? And then once you have that list, you can turn them into affirmations by just adding the words "I am" in front of it. And to take it a step further, is to actually, when you're ready for this, is to say them in the mirror to yourself, right? And if you place your hand on your heart, we know now from the studies, the research shows that just by doing this, it actually releases oxytocin, which just is that bliss chemical. So that's my one little actionable thing that others can do. And I would love to hear, Kathy and Kev, what you guys have to suggest too.
Kev, you want to go, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I can go first if you want.
Yeah.
So a few things for me when I was beginning my whole self-love journey. One was also writing those things that I liked about myself, but also the things that I perceived as my weaknesses, because that kind of gave me a set point of how can I fall in love with it. Another thing I do, which is something I still do now today, which is called my fear of the day. So every day I do something that is fearful to help me get out of my comfort zone. And the reason why I do is two things. It's one, it shows me that I am fighting for myself, but I'm also developing my trust in the universe. Another thing I do too is I'm a visual person, so I have a vision board. And I have a picture of my little self on my vision board, because the longest relationship I'm ever going to have is with myself. So I got to be the parent to myself. I got to be my lover. I got to be my best friend. So I kind of do that. So I love that. And also, just really quick, for my fear of the day, I also actually have a physical jar that I put in. So every day, whatever I accomplished, I put inside there. Just because I think it's really cool to see it like blossom. Another thing I stress is talk. Write your story, live your story, find people who don't judge you, who accept you, and who have what you're looking for. I think for me was, because I'll never forget it actually, and I should have said this when we were talking about our story, I had a person tell me, they were like, I'll love you until you learn to love yourself. And what I realized now was that this person was going to accept me no matter what, when I couldn't accept myself.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to listen to me when I didn't want to listen to myself. They were going to hope for me when I didn't want to hope. So I say it's really important to find people in your life who help you on this journey. So I think talking and speaking and being comfortable with that is a huge thing. Yeah, those are some of the tips. I'm sure there's like tons of many, because this is like a broad topic, but right away, this is like the first thing that comes to my mind.
Oh my God, so beautiful, Kev. You actually made me teary. Can you all tell that Kev is a writer too? I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant writer.
So my I have a couple of things that I've been thinking about, and one of them is, do something for yourself today that you love. What if it's drinking your coffee and watching the snow fall for 10 extra minutes, do that. If it's taking a bubble bath, do that. If it's writing your list of what you love about yourself, that is something you are doing for yourself. If it means going out and taking a walk and being outside and being in nature, do something that is for you, and something that you maybe have even been putting off. Even if it's reading a book for 30 minutes, do that. And then the other thing is that I like to talk about is what is your self-talk like? And whatever you're saying inside, would you say those same things to a friend? If you are sitting there inside beating yourself up, telling yourself, I can't believe you let your thighs look like that. I can't believe your hair looks like that. Look at your arms. If you are being so negative with your self-talk, I want you to ask yourself, would I say these same things to my best friend or to any friend? And the answer is probably going to be no. And if it's no, then why is it okay for you to say that to yourself? So changing that self-talk, and then the mirror work, saying, I love you in the mirror. And if you can't do that yet, you can fake it, but just changing how you talk about yourself when you do something that you normally would have been like, you are so stupid. You're like, no, you know what? Look at you. You're learning something new. This is crazy. You said just change your self-talk. So that was the other thing.
I gotta say though, self-talk is so important. Because let me tell you something though. When I first started this whole thing, like, I almost sometimes get angry at the way I was talking to myself. Like, there was no type of self-love. There was no type of self-respect. And one thing I think is huge, or one thing that I did, was I would literally write those negative sentences like, you're a piece of blah, 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 or you suck at this. And then I would literally I would create 2 columns. So like my thought and then what the opposite of it was. So like, although I'm this, there is this that I love about myself, or we can fix this, or we can, and then at least for me personally, the more I started writing those negative sentences, I was like, damn, I really got to stop writing this. This is a waste of paper. This is a waste of energy. Like, I made it a practice for like 2-3 months to literally track my thoughts and the negative self-talk, or just the self-talk in general. No, that's I really love that. And it brought me back to like my early days. I'm like, damn, that's literally what I had to do.
And you know what I love is that you can get an idea from something that people are saying. Like, we just gave you 5 or 6 different ideas. So see which one fits for you and feels right for you. Don't do it if it doesn't feel right for you. That doesn't mean it's your soul's. It's not going to, and then you're going to get frustrated. You got to take small bites, find what fits for you. And sometimes you have to stretch yourself and grow. But if we say write in a journal, and journal writing is not your thing, then it's okay. Like, don't go take a walk instead. If that's your thing, talk to God in that way. You have to find what works for you, because then you will stick to it.
Preach. Yeah. Like, yeah. And I love that, because someone told me this, and I use this analogy, not just in this area of my life, but all areas of my life. It's a buffet. What do I feel like eating today? Like, what are my needs? That's what self-love for me is. It's like, what are my needs and how do I satisfy it? So your version, your interpretation of how you cultivate and nurture that intimacy with yourself is going to look different from my interpretation, from Nisha's, from Kathy.
Yep.
That's the beauty of life, the variety. It's make it yours.
Love it.
It's love, or Kathy's love, or Nisha's love. It's your love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So we have a question from Ushma, who we all love. Ushma's asking, and Kathy, maybe you can answer this one.
Absolutely.
How can we start to instill more self-love into our kids?
Well, by making sure that you love yourself. That is the first thing, because your children are watching and listening to everything you do. And if they are seeing that you're taking time and loving this for yourself, then that will help them, because children live what they learn, not always what you say.
Absolutely. Definitely. If there are any other questions, I did see one earlier, so I'm going to ask this one for you, Kev. Sonia Auntie, hi. She's asking, does telepathy come into play due to intuition?
I'm going to say yeah. Because I think for me, intuition is when I'm connected with my understanding of source, when I'm tapped into that higher power. And I think there's more than one wow, this is weird. There's more than one ways messages or more than one ways information can be expressed. So yeah, I would say yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys thoughts on
Kathy. Yeah, Kathy, you want to add?
Yeah. I definitely think the more you tap into your intuition, the more all your senses start really heightened. I notice that when I'm in a shift, my sense of smell is so strong. It's like crazy strong. I can't be around certain things, and I'm like, okay, I know that I'm like shifting into another space, into my spiritual journey. And so I believe that as you are tapped more into your intuition, that all of a sudden other things start to show up. I mean, I know when somebody's hurting, I can tell when something else is going on. So yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, another thing that comes up for me though, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, but I feel like the word telepathy sort of implies control. As opposed to intuition, which for me implies surrender.
Yeah.
So I do think that there may be some of it that does come into play, but for me, when I view the two, and I guess I'd have to look up the definitions, but that's the scientists coming out. But I do think that they're actually, although they are very similar, I think the intention behind it is actually very different. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense.
I love
telepathy, the supposed communication of thoughts or ideas by means other than the known senses.
Yeah, honestly, like, that's why for me, I feel like I said yes to this answer, because there are things that just come to me, or I feel things that just don't make sense to the information I'm getting from my senses, or it logically just doesn't. But yeah, like for me, it's synchronicity, telepathy. Other ways. For me, it's another form of trusting my intuition. It's another form of nurturing that relationship with my intuition. It's just not. Yeah, these are like such broad concepts. And the one thing I was actually thinking about earlier is just how there's so many ways to express a similar thing, right? It's all like semantics and like language and context and verbs and like words. Yeah. Same thing too. That's why I love how like the series of our lives may look different, like the events and the details, but the emotions are common. So the same way, it's like people have different words for like intuition, telepathy, etc. But like underneath, it's what's the vibration of what you're trying to express.
Yeah.
That's a little like out there.
Oh man, we could go for like another whole hour.
Yeah, I agree. Like, what's the intention behind all of that? Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question from Anita. She's asking, when you have self-doubt, do you just shut it out of your mind, negative thoughts? Do you just focus on something else? I feel like it's just training of your mind, but it is easier said than done.
Oh.
Ooh, Kev, this is totally you. Go ahead, Kev.
I think I've learned to, or where I am now, is I embrace those negative thoughts. They're teaching me something.
Yeah.
Teaching me how can I love myself? How can I surrender? How can I give it back to my higher self? So and that wasn't in the beginning. In the beginning, I was just like, oh my God, I'm not doing it right because I'm thinking negatively about myself, or I still have doubt. I'm not properly having faith. Like I was critiquing myself. But now I realize that a lot of my self-doubt is meant to teach me something, whether it's maybe this is not the right idea, or maybe I need to get out of the comfort zone. There's an underlying fear that I need to tap into. I always say your emotions are your indicator. There's nothing bad, there's nothing wrong about them. It's meant to guide you. And I think for me too, when they do pop up, I try to, if I'm in the right place, and like there's two ways I approach it. If I have self-doubt pop up and I'm in a place where I'm in alignment with myself and I'm loving myself, then I'll take those steps necessary to identify what the root issue is. If there's self-doubt that's popping up, but I'm like really sensitive, or I'm annoyed, or I'm already in a low vibration, or not in alignment with my true self, I step away for a minute and I try to then take other steps, whether it's reaching out to someone, or I am journaling, or I'm taking a creative approach to understand it. But I think it depends on case by case how I handle self-doubt. But for the most part, I view it as it's a huge teacher if you allow it to be. What are your thoughts?
And I also think the mind is constantly talking. The mind is always going. Rarely are we ever really truly going to quiet the mind until we are dead. That is kind of the mind's job, is to kind of just go. I do think that there are times, I love that too, that it's a barometer of what you're feeling. And also it's okay to say, thank you for being here. Thank you for trying to protect me. I'm okay. God and I got this. My intuition, I got this. Because that's really the ego. The ego is trying to, and the ego to me is an acronym for edging God out. And when we're edging God out, that means our, mind is chattering. But, and also if we just put it under the carpet, then we're really not dealing with it either. So, and that is what we talk, I love Nisha when we talk about spiritual bypassing too, right?
Yeah.
You don't do spiritual bypass. You got to go through it. You got to feel the feelings, but that doesn't mean you have to live in the feelings for days and days and days anymore. That's part of spiritual growth too. It's being able to move through it quicker instead of letting it drag you down for days.
Exactly. Like, experience the negative feelings, understand, like, what is it here to teach you, but then don't let it control you. That's the key, right?
Do you know where I'm going to go with this or not, Nisha?
Go.
There's this really amazing book by Elizabeth Gilbert, and she uses an analogy of like, your self-doubt is a form of fear. And so you're on a road trip and you're driving to your destination, but fear has to come with you on this journey. So it's like, throw the kid or the fear in the back seat. You don't let him touch the window or touch the radio. It's going to be part of yourself, or you're part of your journey. It's just a matter of how much control you give it. So I don't know, just
love it. I love how the three of us, I don't know if our viewers pick up on this, but we each start smiling because the three of us can read each other's minds.
Which I love. It makes me so happy. I'm like, oh.
I know. So I want to take one more question because I think it's such a great one. And are you both okay with time? Like, I didn't realize how quickly it went by. It's already been an hour.
I can do this all day, man.
Yeah, seriously, I love stuff like this.
All right, awesome. So Div, hey Div. Div is asking, with all the talk going on these days about self-love and self-compassion, how do we know when to embrace it and avoid becoming cynical or immune? Sometimes I'm just tired of hearing so much about the topic and don't really buy into all the things that are being preached. Kathy.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. Because I love that with all the talk going on these days about self-love and self-compassion, how do we know when to embrace it and avoid becoming cynical or immune? And to me, I feel like if you're becoming cynical and immune, that means you're not trusting your own intuition. That means you are not listening to your inner guidance, because what they're saying does not feed your soul. They are not your person. They are not the teacher you want. They are not the one to listen to. I love that we can listen to people and we can take from them what fits for us and we can take from them what does not. And do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that's why today we are talking about what does it really mean to love yourself? We're not on here so you love us. Like we're good. We got us. What we want is to make sure that you got you. We want you to love yourself and to do what you came here to do. And if that doesn't fit what everyone else is doing out there, don't worry about it. You do you. Like, that is the most important thing. And wherever you need to find, or if you can find areas that help you to make yourself, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you guys know what I mean. Like, if there are things out there that bring you closer to who you are, but at the end, it's going to be between you and God. You will have to find that self-love between you and God. I mean, you will have to, it's like, I think about this. I can take you from A to M, and after M till Z, that's you and God. I can help you get to M, but after that, you're going to have to do this for yourself. So hopefully I answered that, because that's what I'm thinking is, You know, we get so, I agree, there's buzzwords out there all the time. Self-love is out there. It's a buzzword. And I don't want it to be a buzzword. I want it to be real. Like find that within yourself.
Absolutely. Mic drop.
Yeah, I was gonna say mic drop. It's like kind of how I view it in my head. It's like there's a bunch of songs, right? If we just even broke it down to pop music, there's music from like Katy Perry or this and that. It's what feels right to you, what makes sense to you, and when it goes to define. I think you perfectly said it, Kathy. Like there comes a point where you're left at a spot where to reach your destination, it's all based on yourself and your ability. And I think you'll learn to find the right stuff or what works for you by trusting that intuition. I think it's such a weird, it's a double-edged sword. It's like you find the right tools by learning how to trust your intuition, but at the same time, you have to also sort out or sift through what feels right and what doesn't feel right.
Yep.
Yeah, and absolutely trust your intuition. And if, as you commented back, like that you're worried that you might block out a good one just because you're becoming immune. If you can tap into that, if you can tap into that intuition, you won't miss it because it's going to come to you whether you ask for it or not.
No, and I just want to add to that actually, like the right things will come. Like there's times where I look back and I'm like, I wasn't a huge fan of Abraham's teaching back in 2017, but I'm a huge fan of it now. So like, what you might close off at one stage might come up at a different stage at the right time. So it's, again, it goes back to like Nisha said, it's that feeling of it. It's never stagnant. It's a flow. And I think even for me, maybe you guys can talk about this, or if you want to, it's even like the relationship with yourself and the relationship with God. It's changing. It's never stagnant. It looks different from what it looked like yesterday. So one source that you look like, or you adhere to, or you listen to yesterday or today will look different tomorrow. It's just how you grow and how you evolve.
Well, I think it's really important too that when you are either seeking a spiritual teacher or spiritual direction, true spiritual teaching and teachers will always turn you inward. They are never going to say, follow me, follow what I'm doing. They're going to say, trust yourself, trust your intuition. And that is one thing I love about coaching is when in coaching is we're always turning people inward because we know the answers are inside of you. So a true teacher or teaching is always going to bring you inside to trusting yourself and your intuition. Because like somebody said, that's the GPS, right? That is your GPS system.
So Monica, my sister, is asking, but then are you manifesting bad things? You guys want to take that? I can tell her as the big sister what my thoughts are, but I don't think she wants to hear mine.
Let's hear your thoughts first. I'm curious, actually.
So my thoughts on it are that the universe knows what your true intention is. And if your true intention is based in love, you won't manifest the bad things. So sometimes we think that just by saying the words, whether they're good or bad, that they will happen. But it's really about what you're feeling inside and what your intention is. That's my big sister advice, Monica.
Well, and we have one of my mentors used to say, whatever you, what is that? Whatever you, shoot, no, I can't remember. Whatever you give more attention to, whatever you persist, it persists, right?
Yes.
So if you think I'm going to get negative.
Attention goes where energy flows. Yep.
Right.
Or energy flows where attention goes.
Right. So if you keep putting negative out there, you are going to continue to get negative. If you believe that life is full of challenges and fun and adventures and a new learning opportunity, then when those things come up, instead of seeing them as negative and bad, you will see them as, oh, okay, this is for me to learn from.
Yeah, there's no good or bad. Awesome. Well, like we said, we could go on for hours and hours because this is just what we do.
Dude, it felt like 5 minutes.
I've absolutely, I've absolutely loved this. And I've loved seeing everybody also tune in, and so much love to everybody who's going to watch the replay. And I just want to say, that we're here for you guys. And if anything that we've shared with you today has resonated with you, please do reach out to each of us. You know, I guess we will share where they can find us. Would that be a good next step?
Sure.
So most of you know I am on Instagram and Facebook at MyndTreat, and then my website, myndtreat.com. And, you know, don't be deterred when you see book your free discovery call. What that really is just a chat. So it's not a sales pitch or anything like that. If anybody wants to reach out to me for any reason at all, please feel free to do so. And then Kathy, anything you want to mention about the work you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find me at Kathy Walden on Facebook and at Kathy Walden Spiritual Coach. And the same thing, when you're ready to start doing the work, when you're ready to start loving yourself, a lot of times, especially as mothers, we will not invest in ourselves. And it's okay to invest in yourself. It's okay to get better, because what's keeping you from creating the life that you want, and don't allow anything to stop you now from creating it. So yes, I agree. We all have free discovery calls. You can see if you want to work with us as coaches. And if not, that's okay too. Like, find something and find a place that, again, continues to turn you inward. Always go inward. But we are here to help you, and we are here to make you have the best life you can be. Because, man, living, and I no longer am waiting for that shoe to drop like I used to wait for. And feeling happy and joyful has been such an amazing, beautiful thing I've experienced in the last 6 months. And I want this for everybody. So come find me if you want.
Yeah. Kev.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys kind of touched on it. Like, whether it's through discovery calls, actually working with me or us as in terms of coaching, or even if you just want to engage with us, like via DMs or just a message, you have questions. Yeah, I mean, my brand or my coaching is all about chasing you. So chase your own understanding, figure out who you are, answer those existential questions, because define your truth and who you are, because that's going to give you your understanding of peace, freedom, and unconditional love. Yeah, and I always like to say too, like, if you have a feeling that you should be on the journey, like, whatever, learn to trust those subtle, illogical feelings and thoughts, because they can lead you on the best magical journey. But I also want to say that everyone who's watching this, whether now or later on, you are whole and complete and full of, like, you're a powerful creator. Like, know that you can make literally anything happen. Just small steps in the right direction to build up that momentum. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed what we had to talk about, because I definitely did. And thank you,
Yeah.
Nisha. So great.
Oh, no, my pleasure. My pleasure. And I definitely want to give a shout out to the Jay Shetty Certification School, because it brought us together. And there were a bunch of alumni tuning in too. So thank you so much. And yeah, just thank you so much, everybody, for watching, who's watching now and whoever's going to watch the replay. And oh my gosh, massive amounts of love to you, Kathy and Kev. Mwah.
Oh my gosh.
Tons of love to the people watching. You guys are powerful manifestors. Like, yeah, super grateful.
Love you. So if this talk has resonated with you all, please do let me know, and I'll continue to bring you more conversations connecting like minds. And definitely, Kathy and Kev, we need to do this again, because like I said, we could go on for hours.
Yes, I know. I feel like I'm not, if I don't talk to you guys at least once a week, I'm like, I'm missing my family.
Something's missing. Yeah, it feels empty.
All right, everybody, have an amazing weekend. Have an amazing Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day.
Talk about self-love. This
Yeah.
is the time to love on yourself.
And real quick, if you guys are single, take yourself, like, make yourself a dinner, a bubble bath, like, take yourself out. Treat that relationship yourself.
Definitely.
Exactly. Love you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.